Welcome back to The Cellar. On March 2nd, 1998, 19-year-old Suzanne Lyall left her job at Babbage's, which was located within Crossgates Mall. From there, it is believed that she boarded a city bus from the mall in order to get back to her uptown campus at the University at Albany. Once arriving, a classmate claimed to see Suzanne exit the bus and begin the short walk to her dorm room. From all the information gathered, she never made it to her dorm, and she was never seen again. This is the disappearance of Suzanne Lyall. Now, this case is one that I've known about for quite some time. My reason for choosing to cover this case is because I grew up and spent the first 90% of my life in this region of New York. I lived in a small town roughly 25 minutes from where Suzanne went missing. But the school Suzanne went to, and the mall she worked at, are all places that I've spent countless hours of time at over the years. To say I have a lot of knowledge of the Albany, New York region would be an understatement. This was where I called home for a large portion of my life. Now let's go ahead and dive into Suzanne's story. Suzanne was born in Saratoga Springs, New York, on April 6th of 1978. Saratoga Springs is a city in Saratoga County, New York. The name of the city came about because of the mineral springs in the area. Saratoga is a popular resort destination, known for its casino, and is also home to the Saratoga Racecourse, a horse racing track that gets upwards of 1 million visitors every year. Suzanne Lyall was the youngest of 3 children. Suzanne, her siblings, and her parents, Doug and Mary Lyall, lived and grew up in the nearby Ballston Spa area. Ballston Spa is a village located in Saratoga County. It is located just southwest of Saratoga Springs and is considered a part of the Capital Region. The Capital Region is the metropolitan area surrounding Albany, the capital of New York State. Suzanne had a pretty normal early childhood. Early on in life, she showed an interest in computers. It's even said that she built one from scratch. No simple feat in the late 80s and early 90s. Suzanne would go on to attend and eventually graduate from Ballston Spa High School. She graduated with honors in 1996. Taking her talents then to the State University of New York at Oneonta. She would spend 1 year there before transferring to SUNY Albany. Suzanne was someone who was looking for a challenge, and she felt SUNY Albany would give her just that. Another perk to transferring to SUNY Albany was the fact that she could be a lot closer to home and a lot closer to her boyfriend, Richard Condon. Suzanne and Richard had dated in high school, where he was a few years older than Suzanne. Their romance continued on into their young college lives, with both showing a mutual love and interest in computers. On top of going to school full-time, Suzanne was also working 2 jobs. One of her jobs was working for a computer company in Troy, New York. The other job had her working inside Crossgates Mall at a store called Babbage's. For those unaware of what Babbage's is, it was basically GameStop before GameStop came to be. The company sold video game systems, hardware, games, and tons of computer products. It had a very diverse selection for consumers to shop. Being that Suzanne loved computers, this job was right up her alley. If you have to work while going to college, you might as well work and do something you enjoy. Now this brings us to March 2nd, 1998. This particular day had Suzanne stressed out, as she had a midterm exam that she had to do well on. She got up and got ready and went to take the exam. Following the exam, she went about the rest of her day and completed all of her classes by around 4 p.m. Following her day in the classroom, Suzanne would travel to Babbage's to work a shift until 9 p.m. that evening. Following her work shift, she would proceed to board the public bus in order to get a ride back to her dorm room. Now, to give a little more context to the overall story, Babbage's, within Crossgates Mall, was located roughly 2 miles or 3.2 kilometers west of Suzanne's college campus. I found within the reporting that the bus driver did in fact confirm that she was on that bus, but the bus driver could not confirm where she got off. All he stated was that she wasn't on the bus at the end of his night. For the sake of moving things forward, we will presume, for now, that Suzanne got off at the typical stop she normally would get off at. This stop would bring her within a relatively short walk to her dorm room. Another report was given to the police from a friend of Suzanne's. This friend stated that she saw Suzanne at around 9:45 p.m. According to the friend, she exited the bus near campus and began walking towards her dorm. But sadly, Suzanne would never reach her dorm on that fateful night in March of 1998. So what happened to Suzanne Lyall? Now, in a lot of cases, we see days go by before someone is reported missing. One positive in Suzanne's case is the fact that she was reported missing the next day. The downside of it all was that campus security didn't take the report seriously. Her boyfriend Richard Condon phoned Suzanne's parents to tell them that she had not made it back to her dorm room. According to Richard, Suzanne would always call him when she got home from work, and she had not responded or answered any of his phone calls to her dorm. Campus security would state to the parents of Suzanne that college kids disappearing for a day or two was not uncommon, and that they shouldn't worry. But Suzanne's parents were worried. Their daughter was not someone who took risks or ran off to party or anything of that nature. Suzanne was dedicated to school and to her jobs, and she took it all very seriously. She was very mature for a 19-year-old. Campus security would speak with Suzanne's dorm mates, and they reported that they did not hear her return on March 2nd. So we know that something happened between the bus stop and Suzanne's walk to her dorm room. Suzanne's parents would soon access her bank account and see that a $20 withdrawal had taken place at a local ATM, which was located inside a Stewart's convenience store. This occurred at 4 p.m. on March 3rd, a full day after Suzanne had gone missing. From there, a few more days would pass before campus security finally agreed with Suzanne's parents that this was not a normal situation. New York State Police would soon be called in to assist in the investigation. The Stewarts where the withdrawal took place had a camera. The video footage was obtained, but the video did not show the ATM. It was primarily focused on the register area of the store, so police could not be certain who used the ATM with Suzanne's debit card. What is known is that whoever accessed it knew the PIN. The police would focus in on a man wearing a Nike baseball cap who was seen on the video footage. After some time, the man was found and the police would speak to him extensively. Following this, the police did not believe the man had anything to do with Suzanne's disappearance, but they would also state that they could not 100% rule him out. This particular Stewart's in question was 2 miles from the college campus, and according to reports, it was not an area that Suzanne frequented. After my studies into this case, I do not believe that the man in the Nike hat had anything to do with her disappearance. I found a statement made by Suzanne's parents that she would only ever withdraw $20 from an ATM. Knowing this, and knowing that only $20 was taken out of her account, it leads me to believe that this was indeed either Suzanne or someone else that had access to her debit card and PIN. Further reports from the banks would show that 2 other withdrawals of $20 had taken place on March 2nd. One at an ATM near the bus stop in the morning, and one was within Crossgates Mall at around the time Suzanne would have arrived for work. I believe both of these logically make sense that they would have been Suzanne. Now, one other piece of information that sparks questions is, did anyone else know Suzanne's debit card PIN? Well, the answer to that is yes. Her boyfriend knew her PIN number and very well could have been the one withdrawing the cash on March 3rd inside that Stewart's convenience store. Now, before we speculate further, let's dive into a few more pieces of information the police uncovered. One being Suzanne's name tag. Her name tag was located 2 months after her disappearance and around 90 feet away from the bus stop near campus. It was in an area that leads away from her campus, on the opposite side of a parking lot. A lot of speculation about this name tag would ensue, with more information being found that this was an old name tag and not a current one Suzanne was using. So how did it get there? Why was it there? Or who potentially placed it there? Are all questions that come to mind. At the end of the day, the police looked into over 270 leads in this case. Over 300 acres of property were searched, including some wooded areas in the nearby Rensselaer Lake. Nothing was ever found during these searches, and not a trace of Suzanne Lyall has ever been found in the 25 or so years since her disappearance. So let's dive into some theories on the case. One that I want to touch on first is a potential stalker. A friend and coworker at Babbage's would report to police that Suzanne had been stalked by an unknown man prior to her disappearance. From all reports, Suzanne wasn't overly concerned about it, and to this day, that man has never been identified. The second theory is Suzanne's boyfriend, Richard. From all reports, Richard was controlling and manipulative. Suzanne's mother came out and stated that she had tried to end things with Richard a handful of times, and she just wasn't happy with where their relationship was at. But Richard would always find a way to convince Suzanne to give things another chance. On top of this, why did Richard know Suzanne's debit card PIN? We know for a fact that Suzanne never re-entered the campus dorms. Logs of her access card to the campus were kept, and the last time her access card had been used was during the day on March 2nd. So did Richard do something to Suzanne and then make a withdrawal the next day to steer the police in a different direction? I would say it's highly probable. He knew her PIN, and he knew she would only withdraw $20 at a time. The same idea comes to me about the name tag being found 2 months after the fact, which could be someone trying to plant evidence to confuse investigators. To add to the case against Richard, he initially cooperated with the investigators and gave them an alibi that checked out. He had been playing a computer game online with a friend who ultimately vouched for him. But soon after Richard would obtain a lawyer, he would refuse a polygraph test and to this very day has never spoken to investigators again. I would ultimately say that Richard, for me, is at the top of the suspects list. Now, the last theory that I want to dive into on this case is one involving the infamous Israel Keyes. Now, one day I would like to do a deep dive into Israel Keyes, so for this video I'm not going to dive too deeply into him, but at the time of Suzanne's disappearance, it is known that Keyes was living around 3 to 4 hours away in Constable, New York. Keyes had in the past asked a victim for their PIN number and had subsequently taken money out of their account. Keyes was also known to use locations like parking lots to scope out his victims. So the question becomes, could Israel Keyes be the man that was stalking Suzanne in the weeks leading up to her disappearance? Israel Keyes would finally be caught and arrested in 2012, but before he could spill the beans on his many murders, he would take his own life in prison at the age of 34, taking everything he had done to his grave. So ultimately, could Keyes have done it? I believe he could have, and one other piece of information that people point to is the NAMUS-45 list. This list was put together based on Keyes' computer searches of missing persons. Within those searches, police would find Suzanne Lyall's name. This has led many to believe that Israel Keyes was responsible for the kidnapping and murder of Suzanne Lyall. At the end of the day, this case has remained an unsolved mystery for 2.5 decades. Answers are still being sought after, but few have truly been found. But that doesn't mean good hasn't come from this tragic story. The family of Suzanne started the Center for Hope, a foundation that provides support to the families and loved ones of missing persons. While in 2003, President George Bush would sign Suzanne's Law into effect. This law would require that all police departments immediately notify the National Crime Information Center whenever someone between the age of 18 and 21 is reported missing. This was never done during Suzanne's investigation. If you or anyone you know has any information about the disappearance of Suzanne Lyall, please reach out to the local FBI office in Albany, New York. You can do so by calling 518-465-7551. Any information, no matter how big or small, could help finally bring about some answers in this tragic case. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode. If you enjoy the content, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps the channel continue to grow. Also, you can check the description box below and find the link to my merch store. Tons of awesome designs, and the proceeds help fund the channel. For those of you that are interested, I have a Cellar Dwellers membership tier for the channel. It's $2.99 a month and comes with some pretty cool perks, so if that interests you, then please go check it out. I also have that linked in the description box below. If you'd like to submit a real-life scary story that you would like featured on an episode on the channel, please do so using the email linked in the description box below. As always, I do all the research, writing, recording, and editing for the channel myself, so anything that you do to support the channel is greatly appreciated. Until next time, I will see you all again as we head back into the cellar.